Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Pilates Lounge podcast. My name's Katie Crane, and all the business of Pilates. I have such an important season for all of us as Pilates professionals. And so I have really tried hard to make sure that the guests that I invite onto the show this season are specifically with Pilates instructors in mind. So I know for a fact, as a Pilates professional, that you are going to really benefit from my guest today. Today, I'm welcoming Rosemary Gattuso onto the show. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Rosemary, and then I'm going to hand over the microphone to her. Rosemary has been in alternative dispute resolution for over 15 years, specializing in family mediation and restorative justice practices. Merging her experience as a family mediator with her study of neuroscience and trauma, Rosemary explores ways to live in a trauma-informed and strengths-based way, which is the subject of her first book, which was called It's Not You, It's Me, A Chronic Overthinker's Guide to Self-Reflection. Now, as a chronic overthinker herself, Rosemary experienced firsthand the transformative impact of rewriting overthinking into strengths-based reflection, and she is committed to sharing this with the world. So I'm super happy to be welcoming Rosemary onto the show. And I say this partly in jest, but in reality, we as Pilates professionals are overthinkers. It's partly I believe it's partly what we are attracted to, why we are attracted to Pilates. Pilates is so specific in the way that we teach things, and we want people to learn to move better. And we're very precise in the way that we teach and the way that we learn the repertoire ourselves. But sometimes overthinking we can really get in our own way. So welcome to the show, Rosemary. I would love for you to introduce yourself and let our listeners know what really got you into this field of overthinking.
Thanks, Katie. It's great to be here. And it's interesting what you say about Pilates instructors being overthinkers, because I guess I didn't really join the dots. I wouldn't see it that way. So that's really interesting and insightful for me. And yes, I am a family mediator, which means that I predominantly work with separating parents who are going through, the court or outside of court process to help them come up with their arrangements. And I guess what this did for me is that it put me on a daily basis in the room with people in the middle of their crisis. And so I was able to really observe and reflect on the way that we manage adversity. And that really helped me see trends that I noticed, and also allowed me to really name overthinking when I see it or when I'm doing it, because I was able to see it in others and see it quite specifically, sort of, how my work as a speaker and a writer in overthinking and being strengths-based really evolved as a result of, working with separating parents, and then also merging that with my study and work as a couples and family counsellor, with this quest for knowledge on being trauma-informed and strengths-based and what that looks like and childhood trauma. And so I guess what I want to share today is a merging of all these parts of me, my overthinking part, my mediator part, the part of me that was, a counsellor and looking at being strengths-based. And it really, there were a few pivotal points, but one of them was when I found myself working as a family mediator in an organization that was very strengths-based. And it was really the first time in my career that I found that my work, my ability, my skills, my qualities were really being applauded, encouraged, promoted, and supported. Whereas until I got that job, I was in roles that really focused on my weaknesses and where I needed to improve and who I needed to be like or what I needed to do to then reach a goal. And so it was this real difference from being strengths-based and not being strengths-based that really elevated my personal development and my career development, and also allowed me to see it in my clients in ways that they manage and actually working with clients. It's much smoother and easier when you have a strengths-based approach rather than focusing on what's wrong in the situation. So I guess that's really how, who I am and how I came to be sitting here speaking about overthinking.
Yeah, okay, cool. And could you explain to our listeners what a strength-based approach is in a workplace? Because I think that this is a really important conversation for us to be having.
Definitely. And I mean, I can, look at my own working life, to really pinpoint. When we're being strengths-based, we're more likely to focus on what's strong in a situation, and we're more likely to see what would otherwise be termed a mistake as a learning opportunity or a potential learning opportunity. Whereas when we're not being so strengths-based, we're going to focus on what's wrong in the situation. And we might also stay stuck in past scenarios, which will make it difficult or harder to actually make decisions or take those, risks that we have to take if we are running a business and want to try something new or move forward or do something differently. And so, and when we're not being strengths-based, we focus on what's wrong. We focus on what's the weaknesses or what could go wrong or what other people might think or what happened in the past, which is going to stop me from then moving forward. Whereas when we are being strengths-based, we're able to see our own strengths, we can see the strengths of others, and we can learn from mistakes, and that will help us look at our future and what it could look like and make those decisions or take those chances.
Right. Because I feel like I've been in business for about 20 years, and when I was first on my own, I was definitely strengths-based. I had nothing to fear. I had nobody else relying on me for things to go right. But then once you take on other people, if you're not really intentional with the conversations that you have, the language that you use, and even the self-talk that you have with yourself, it's a slippery slope to getting stuck on the negative. And if something goes wrong, being fearful of that happening again. So what are some strategies that we could use in the workplace? Say if I'm a studio owner or even just an instructor, but I'm really trying to build my business, what are some positive strategies that we could use to make sure that we do flip that switch?
And I should also note that when we are being strengths-based, then we are able to see an individual for their own uniqueness, and as opposed to comparing them to others. So, and that's also, and whether or not, and that could be ourselves. So we see ourselves for our uniqueness and the way that we do things differently, rather than saying, well, the other, clinic, studio, the other practitioner, whoever it is, does things that way. So I should do it that way. Why don't I do it that way? So it's that real, catered to the individual who's at hand. So then if we use that approach, then in a business scenario, then look at whether or not the systems in place then allow the option to really cater for the individual, workplace and employees. Does it have that flexibility? Can it always? Sometimes you can't, but being able to really harness, focus and encourage, support and promote that individual's strengths. And it could be, a whole range of things about the way that they work or what they do or the way that they talk. And I mean, as a mediator, I was often in this, my first job, I was often given families that would suit my personality and the way that I work. So that type of thing, being as personalized as possible, given limitations. because sometimes you can't be as personalized. So I guess that's one thing. Then another thing is being mindful of language. Does our language focus on what's wrong, or does it focus on what's strong? And it's sometimes a fine line, and sometimes we are just so used to highlighting what's wrong or what needs to change and what's not working that it can be a bit challenging to flip it, especially if that's how we're taught. So, it could be a matter of just being aware and saying, well, what are the strengths? How can I pinpoint, and even making it as a rule, or not necessarily a rule, but just a guide? Well, if I'm going to make one statement about something that could be done differently, then can I match it with a statement about something that is working well and that I am happy with? And that, and I guess also on the language, are we using judgmental language, or are we using language that really shows understanding? Because when we are using more sort of judgmental and closed questions, what we're saying can generally come under what's wrong. Whereas where our terminology is more neutral and more understanding and shows that, the individual approach, then we're more likely to use language that could come under what's strong. And I mean, as a mediator, I should add that, my role is not to take sides, give a judgment or give an opinion. And that's one of the first things I say, that I'm sort of the independent party. So it made me have to be really mindful of my language. So and I can see the benefits, because when you have to have a challenging conversation with someone, because sometimes you do, then the approach and the language can really be, I guess, make or break it, the situation. And so that's what I saw, because often I would have to ask really sensitive questions and really personal questions often, and then turn around and say, I'm sorry, I think you're better off going in court, or I can't see you, I need, for whatever reason. And that this client has got all their hope on going through mediation, but I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I don't think it's the best process for you. But because the language was quite strengths-based, and even, in the middle of the turmoil, it was non-judgmental, then that allowed those difficult conversations to have, and for them to happen with respect.
Yeah, so obviously respect for the people that you're working with and for your team plays a huge role, doesn't it? And I always feel like this type of culture, it has to come from the top. If the person who is running the business doesn't foster this attitude, then it's never going to happen with everybody else. And it's for us, I always feel as a business owner, I'm not the boss, I'm not the leader, I'm just the facilitator, so that everybody can find themselves, everybody can find their own voice. There's no paper cutouts, and people become their greatest potential by just giving them space, rather than always saying, this is how we do things, this is how you have to do it. We always have team training or in service. This is how I've found the best approach to get clients to continue to come to me or something. But we share ideas rather than this dogmatic approach of this is how we always do it.
And what that really highlights for me is the importance of listening. Mm-hmm. And the importance of listening when you are in a leadership role, or you're the manager, it's your business, because when you listen, that's when all these valuable information comes out. And that, again, it goes to what you were saying, rather than telling them what to do, how about you just listen and be the last one to speak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. Okay, well, let's get down to overthinking. What are the personality traits, or are there personality traits of an overthinker? And if so, what are those traits?
Well, I'll start, I guess, by telling you what my definition of overthinking is. And so, I've said that, I draw on a strengths-based approach, which can classify everything under what's wrong or what's strong. So when we are in our overthinking mode, then we analyze our situation under the lens of what's wrong. So it's that tendency to see what's wrong in the situation, or what could be wrong, because it could be about making an assumption and then taking action to then prevent something from happening that really exists only in thought. Because, if I don't do X, then Y will happen and I'm going to be worse off. So I'm going to do that, or I'm not going to do it at all. So it's, any way of looking at a situation that focuses on what's wrong. And then I guess the flip side of that is that if we look at the opposite of overthinking, which I propose is reflection, then reflection is an analysis of a situation that focuses on what's strong. So if you can do one, you can do the other. And when we're in overthinking mode, it feels quite heavier. In comparison to reflection, it feels heavy, and there's a lot of sort of that, potential for chaos, potential for I should have, I shouldn't have, dwelling on past mistakes, and that holds us in the past because we don't want to repeat the past, but we also beat ourselves up because of the past. Whereas when we are in reflection mode, then it's easier to turn a mistake into a learning opportunity, and it's easier to make decisions that are more future focused and take that step, because and it feels lighter. We're able to see the strengths in a situation or the benefits or the learning, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that again. And so then the traits, it's any time that we look at a situation and we focus more on what could go wrong or what has gone wrong, or the weaknesses, or we beat ourselves up, because it's natural to be in that mode at one point or another. It's just when it's keeping us there for so long. And that's where I kind of refer back to the trends I noticed in managing adversity in my clients. And I know that, that it's different industry, but the principles can be applied equally, in that those who were able to manage their challenges a lot smoother and a lot quicker tended to see what's strong in a situation more than what's wrong. It doesn't mean that they didn't look to what's wrong, but they were able to stay with the focus on their strengths and what's strong for longer, so that was the more dominant lens in that particular situation, and that enabled them to go through quite a challenging time a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm. Well, and isn't like the Buddhist rule about worrying is simple, don't.
Yeah.
So,
well, if I...
what is the saying? If a cure exists, why worry? If no cure exists, what is the use of worrying?
Yeah,
There's nothing,
exactly.
nothing you can do by worrying.
Yeah.
But we spend so much time worrying. I do wonder, I love neuroscience, and I do wonder if the worrying is part of our primal brain, that our brain is always about surviving. So our brain will take in information from our environment and then put that information into a catalog. So if we have been in an environment for a long time where we have felt threatened or in danger or not safe, then our brain is always telling us that we could be in danger. So then we're always going to be worrying about the what ifs. But the brain doesn't know what is in the past, what is now in the present, or what is in the future. So we have to keep pulling ourselves out of that state and just focus on the present. What can I do now about whatever the situation is, whether it's a staff situation, a client situation, a personal situation? What can I do now to move the needle in the direction that I want to happen, regardless of what we are perceiving to be happening?
Yeah. And you're exactly right, because biologically, we are primed to overthink. We are primed to see what's wrong for our survival. And then also because of negative bias, where we have a tendency to then focus on and highlight what's wrong, over the strengths in a situation. So then it's really asking us to go against biology. And then it's not just biology, it's our experience, because maybe we were raised in an environment where that was the default. Where it was that over-worrying, it was, to look at the negative and what could go wrong. And so that's another layer, which means that, it's about, going against what we've learnt, so it's unlearning, those ways of being. And then I think Another layer is that some people are more sensitive than others. And when I talk about sensitive, I talk about being biologically sensitive. So then their response to stimulus, to external stimulus, is going to be a little bit more intense naturally. So then there's so many layers, and these are just the ones that are kind of not obvious, but more out there and easy to understand and see how they could impact us. So, and I guess that's where, awareness is really important, because that's the first step, that reflection, that being able to, really catch ourselves out, and not in a bad way, but just to that reflective way to help process. And then, there's also, because if it's biologically, we have this tendency to overthink, then what are the practices that we can do to help that biology to really strengthen our brain, so that we enhance the parts of our brain that are going to make reflection easier and become more default, and then tone down the parts that are going to look at the worry and the stress. And of course, any sort of mindfulness meditation is quite a very good and practical tool to help sort of behind the scenes to make that reflective process a lot easier biologically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love meditation. And also, I guess, things like journaling, whether it's a gratitude diary or just writing things that come to mind, just getting things out of our head maybe is a form of meditation, getting out in nature. Anything that gets us away from the busy, I feel is going to be beneficial, because it's almost like when you get into that busy, then it becomes a little whirlwind, and then you don't think that you can get out of it because you're too in it. And it's the hardest thing, isn't it, to actually step out of it? I mean, as an overthinker, you know that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a vortex that pulls us in.
It really is. And I guess that's why I do meditate regularly, and I know I feel the sort of side effects when I don't, where I become more reactive and tend to overthink a lot more as a default. But
do you think that overthinking is almost a form of procrastination? Like, it actually stops us from doing what we need to do?
Well, it does. It does, yeah, because then we're considering all the potential outcomes, that it's then hard to just step forward and make a future focused decision.
Yeah. And like, those potential outcomes don't even exist. They're all in our mind, and our mind becomes so jumbled with all those potentials.
And I guess that's the thing with, because these are, negative assumptions, or we're jumping to conclusions. And one rule that I use which is drawing on my legal background, is to use the rules of evidence to help tame overthinking. And essentially what the rules of evidence are is it's a guideline for what can be submitted in court and relied upon. And so, and really, to be relied upon in court, it has to be something that can be verified by a person or a thing. So an assumption can't be verified by anyone. Jumping to conclusion, it can't. These fears that we have and these thoughts, they're not verified. So that's, one sort of little troubleshooting guide is, well, if I'm about to take action or spending a lot of time on a thought that's causing a lot of anxiety and stress and turmoil for me, and I can't, move forward, but it's not admissible in court. Well, why is it admissible in me? For me, why am I spending so much time on it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, sometimes that's easier said than done, though, isn't it? Because overthinking just takes so much space up in our head that even I really do like that approach of what is the evidence, because there is none, but then the overthinking brain would then actually try and talk themselves into that, but this could still happen kind of thing. So what are some things that we could do? So we know meditation is a great one, because it calms the nervous system, is going to help clear the mind of all of that junk. I'm thinking, I know personally I get a lot out of my gratitude diary in the morning. What are some other things that you do for yourself? Just a quick little interruption to say a big thank you to listening to the Pilates Lounge podcast. This podcast is all about sharing our love of movement and Pilates with as many people as possible. So if you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to review us so that we can get the word out there. Also, if you haven't joined us on the Pilates Muse newsletter, it's a bi-weekly newsletter that shares a whole load of information with you. And we also have virtual online education programs. So if you're looking to get inspired and grow even more as a Pilates professional, check us out, www.thepilatesprofessional.com.au. Back to the show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, definitely the, meditation, but even movement, I think movement is another form of meditation as well. And I really like the use of the what's wrong and the what's wrong category, because that's helps me in my overthinking to name what's happening. And so sometimes it's enough to name it and see where you're going. And, I'm going down the what's wrong path now. Okay, sometimes that can be enough in itself, because then that awareness will bring personal growth. Because then next time I'll be like, oh, and I mean, it could be for something silly. I know the other day I was just walking down the street and I had so many thoughts in my head. And then I just stopped and I thought, they all come under what's wrong. And then it just lifted. I mean, there was nothing, and they were really sort of mundane things, nothing major. But it was just that reflection and thinking, oh, okay, that's had taken over. And
so give us some examples. Give us some examples of what might be a what's wrong thought. And then what? Then you change it into a what's strong thought, or you just reflect on the fact that you are stuck in what's wrong?
Yeah, it could be either. So, in that example that I gave, it was that awareness. And then I guess what my hope is that then the next time that awareness might be quicker, or I might stop, or I might not go down that path as much. Then another way to really flip overthinking is when we have thoughts that are some things like, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have, anything that implies regret for something that we did or didn't do. Then one way is to look at, well, why is that thought so important? And when we look at why it's important, then we're able to extract the hidden meaning behind that. And it's generally like a values or belief-based and strengths-based origin. And I'll give you an example. And I'll use a simple example just so it's easy to understand. So I might be thinking, I shouldn't be late. I'm always late. I can't believe I'm late. So then I will say, well, it's important to me that I shouldn't be late, because it's important that I do what I say I'm going to do, because I said I was going to be at 10 and I was there at 10:15, and that's, So then, we go to the next sentence. The next sentence, again, asks why is it important that I do what I say I'm going to do? It's important to me because, it shows respect and integrity, and you can just keep going down by asking, why is it important? It's important to me because, and you're able to extract, quite meaningful and significant strengths about yourself that show why that has been such a big issue or a regret, and a way to really beat yourself up about something. I know it's a very simple example, but I think it's an easy way to illustrate.
Mm-hmm. So then you're turning it around in your own mind. Then instead of beating yourself up about it, you're recognizing why it's important, and like you say, bring it into a strength, or you're flipping it into a positive. Well, this is why it's bothering me so much, because it shows up for me in this way. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yes. And then it gives added meaning to it. It's not just I've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's, well, this is why it's important to me. And sometimes you can even just, flip it in terms of what the opposite is. Like, I shouldn't be late. Well, I should be on time. Why is it important that I should be on time? And you just keep asking yourself why. It's important to me that I'm on time because, I do what I say I'm going to do. I show integrity and respect for others. And you can just keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So then you don't get so down on yourself about it, or even
because it's like, actually, that's quite honorable.
Right. And then we could use that if we are employing other people, because I know sometimes instructors get down on themselves. We had a coach come in for one of our staff in services, and she spoke a little bit about the disc profiles, and she talked a little bit about how we converse with ourselves and the things that we immediately think about ourselves. And I was really surprised to hear the feedback from some of our instructors. One instructor in particular said that a lot of her self-talk is, why did you do that? That was so stupid. You were too loud. All these really negative things that I didn't even realize that could be in somebody's head constantly. And so then if you are in a leadership position or you are an employer, it was such a valuable exercise for us, because then that actually helped me understand why she gets quite emotionally triggered if she gets negative feedback. And it's not even really bad feedback from a client. It might just be, that class wasn't quite hard enough or wasn't quite challenging enough. To her, it breaks her heart. But now I've realized it breaks her heart because that just adds to her constant negative self-talk. And so now it's up to us to be elevating her, be coming into work and knowing that this is where you're supported. And sometimes it's easy for us as a leader not to always let our staff know when somebody gives a good review. Somebody just walked out and just said, that was the best class. And we just go, thanks, see you. But I know now for that instructor, those little bits of gold are the most important gifts that we can give her, because her self-talk isn't there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and that's really, really important illustration of, I guess, the impact that, leadership can have, and also the impact of our self-talk. Because we don't know what everyone is thinking or saying. I mean, this was quite a specific scenario where it was handed over, and that gave that insight. So then maybe it is important to do that regular type of check-in.
Mm-hmm. I think definitely, it was such a gift to even have this coach come in and open that conversation for us then to be like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize that this was happening. Now we're able to deal with it. But I think as a workplace, in hindsight, I wish that I'd had the conversation earlier. Now it's definitely going to be something that we check in on each other. We don't just assume that everybody comes in smiling because that's what you're expected to do at work. But not everybody is smiling on the inside, and not everybody can just let things, brush off like water on a duck. I'm a water on a duck person. I'm like the skin as thick as a lizard. I don't really care. My parents always taught me it's none of your business what anybody thinks of you. And I really do believe that. It's none of my business what you think of me. So why would I care? But not everybody has that attitude. Some people really believe that what other people think of them is really, really valuable. And
I think when we believe in ourselves, then the opinions of others can wash away from us quite easily. And so I guess that's where, it's the importance of the quality of our self-talk can help, because it can either build on our sense of self and how much we believe in ourselves, or it can take away from. And that kind of what's wrong self-talk is taking away from our sense of self and our ability to believe in ourselves. So, in workplaces, if teams are able to support each other and give evidence here and there of what's strong, then I guess that's, could contribute to the building of, individual sense of self. And I mean, I'm not saying that's the role of teams and managers to help nurture others' sense of self, but if there is the opportunity, Because sometimes if you have working with someone who doesn't believe in themselves and they're getting evidence from other people that other people don't believe in them, then, and whether or not it's true or not, I guess that can really be damaging. And that could be the difference between a really good Pilates instructor quitting and giving it up early than going ahead. And I mean, look, there's, I guess it's a whole nother topic in terms of why and how people believe in themselves and others don't. But being trauma-informed, being strengths-based in the workplace is about acknowledging that. You don't have to have the answers, but if there's any evidence of strength, then, just offer it.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're used to offering evidence of what's wrong.
Right.
But without, even though what's strong is still there, it's just sort of, I don't know, it's not acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes even just that acknowledgement can then help. And I mean, I look at my own career and that when I was working in a strengths-based environment, my sense of self skyrocketed because I was continually giving evidence of my strengths. Whereas in the past, it was evidence of my weaknesses. Plus, I was already had a low sense of self anyway. So it already sort of put me, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back in that sense. And I mean, that scenario, that environment really helped me. Now, it's not that I'm not saying we need external validation to help, but to build our sense of self, it's not the only thing, but it can definitely help, specifically when the past experience has been the opposite. Because if the past experience had been more positive, then the self-talk is more positive and the negative talk of others washes away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So are there positives about being an overthinker?
Well, I wrote a book about it. So if I wasn't, I wouldn't have written a book.
Tell us then.
And we wouldn't.
Give us some joy for the overthinkers.
Well, it just means that when you overthink, you have a tendency to look at the bigger picture sometimes. I mean, sometimes look, that can be a curse. Sometimes it can be, but it can often be a benefit. I think, as I said, overthinking is an analysis that focuses on what's wrong. But if we can shift that to focus on what's strong or bring in some of the strengths, then we have a more balanced approach. And maybe we do consider a whole lot of possibilities, but if we can also see the uniqueness and the benefits and the strengths, and that will help guide us. And I guess that the difference between being an overthinker and managing that and being able to use that to your benefit is going to reflect on the individual's sense of self at that point in time, how much they believe in themselves. Because when you believe in yourself, then you can see what's strong in your situation, and then you're going to be more resilient. So when, you've come across a challenge, you'll be able to overcome that. When you do make a mistake, you'll be able to learn from that. And when other people show you their self-doubt, you'll be able to let it go. It'll still be there, but it has less of an impact. And this is something that changes over time, because we're not going to, and not even just over time, but in different scenarios. There are scenarios where parts of our lives where we tend to focus on our strengths more anyway. And we can do that because we're confident in those scenarios, and then others not so much. And so that's where, looking at someone in your team who is really competent in some areas, and then other areas they kind of shy away from, or they don't put their hand up for, or you just, it's there. Well, are there ways to help support? I mean, we can't do everything, so that's fine. But, I'm looking at, really obvious inconsistencies where we see strengths that have been built up over time and other areas where the strengths aren't as great.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, team and management can then look at, well, is there evidence of strengths that maybe they're not seeing?
Mm. My parents always taught me, in the next 5 years, the person you will be is determined by the books you read, the music you listen to, and back then the television programs you watch. I mean, now it's whatever you watch on a screen. So is this part of it? Like, well, I believe that it is, but could you touch on that? Because you do trauma informed work as well. And obviously we become our environment. We become whatever we associate with, whoever we're hanging out with, whatever it is we're reading. So could you touch on that a little bit and maybe talk about, how we could potentially change the way that we are by changing our environment?
Yeah. And essentially what I've seen and learned is that we are an adaptation of our experiences. So, and what I mean by that is what we do, what we think, what we say, how we respond. They're all clues to our past. So, and that's sort of links in with, what your parents said. It's what you read, what you're listening to, what So if I guess we have a tendency to see our weaknesses and overthink and it has a negative impact on us, then there was something about our early experience that showed us that that's what we needed to do to survive in the world. So changing that can often be a challenge. And particularly now where we have so much external stimulus that can really highlight our weaknesses, or highlight our weaknesses by highlighting the strengths of others at a really amplified volume. And then if we're at a time where we're struggling more than normal, then that external stimulus is going to have a much greater impact on us. So then that's where, let's be mindful about what we are exposing ourselves to, what we're watching, what we're listening to, who we are associating with. Are these experiences focusing on what's strong, or are they focusing on and when I use that, I mean in terms of ourselves. Are we as well as not just the external, watching the news and you see all these, awful things that happen throughout the world. So, but it's also, so that's, what's wrong in terms of our external environment, but also what's wrong in ourselves when we perhaps look at social media and see what everyone else is doing, and it reminds us of what we're not doing, what everyone else has and what we don't have. So, and as again, when we are going through particular, time where it's harder for us to believe in ourselves, then that external stimulus is going to have a greater impact. So in that case, maybe we need a bit of a detox, or to be really careful with, what we watch. I mean, a friend of mine the other day said that he had deleted his social media apps from his phone. So that would stop him, going on the phone, and even just for time management as well. But it's not just, it's more than the time management. It's what we're exposing ourselves to and how we can manage that. So yeah, definitely, I mean, you watch a really sad movie, and if you're a sort of sentimental or sensitive person, it'll make you cry. So I mean, that's just a very simple and basic example, but that's, I guess, how we can absorb everything else. And depending on where we're at, will really reflect on how much we take it on. But I guess I've noticed over the years with myself that when my sense of self increase or improves, then what I actually reach out with and who I'm talking to and what I'm watching and where I'm doing and what I'm doing and where I'm going changes as well to match that. Because if we believe in ourselves sort of at this level, then our friends and the people we have relationships with will be people who reflect that. But then something will happen and our belief goes up, and then we might, break up with friends or relationships, whatever it is, or look for a new job because there's a sort of a mismatch with our external. And it could even be what we watch. We used to watch all these, types of shows, and now we don't. So it's a reflection of our personal growth as well.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like also as I grow and as I become happier with the person I am, I don't even have as many friends anymore. I'm actually much happier on my own and with a smaller group of people. I feel like I'm not looking for validation from as many people anymore. I'm very intentional with the people that I don't have time for you. If you're going to talk about other people, I don't have time for you. I'm only interested in hanging out with people who are talking about their future, their dreams, and doing good in this world. I'm not up for it anymore,
Yeah. And I guess what jumps out for me about what you've said is that they're people who are not just aligned with you, but they're focusing on what's strong. They're being strengths-based.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I wonder if it is partly of maturing, of getting older. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it happens for everybody. But, and I also feel like as we grow into who we are and as we become more confident, then we don't need all the things. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I'm not looking for the fast fix of anything. I'm just happy looking after my own health, serving other people, doing whatever I can to create a positive community and going, well, for me, it's all about serving a people. I feel like if we're not here for that, then I'm not quite sure what we're here for, but it becomes getting anything back,
Yeah, then definitely the focus does change, and that's reflected in our experience, where it doesn't matter how many friends you have, it's just that they're aligned with you. Whereas maybe when our sense of self is not as strong, then we do think about friends and, so, in terms of numbers, how many friends, or being able to go out and do things. It's just a different focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, unless you're an extrovert, of course. I'm sure the extroverts are still out there socializing.
Yeah, I think,
that's what you need. So could we just recap? If we're thinking of whether it's in our workplace, the people that we're working with, or even with clients, what are some things that we really need to consider? So it is about changing changing the way or maybe just changing the language that we use around people so that it is, like you say, strength-based language and not focus so much on the little negative Nellies. But what else could we do to really create a positive environment and a growth environment?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that whatever we do with our clients and our team, we have to do it with ourselves. Because once we experience it, then we can feel the benefits and see how important it is. And also then it makes us, I guess, easier for us, becomes more natural for us to be strengths-based. So, and it doesn't mean that you can be really hard on yourself and not be strengths-based with others, because you can definitely be really hard on yourself and then look at everyone's strengths. But, why don't we do the same with us? Let's be strengths-based with ourselves and be mindful of the quality of our language with ourselves. And even the language that we use with ourselves should be the same or similar to the language we would use with our colleagues, or with clients. It's not, and because, I'm a mediator. And so I say we have to be our own mediator, show that non-judgment. Non-judgment when we talk about ourselves and non-judgment also with others. So really the language is key. And I think also to acknowledge that we can't aim for perfection because we're just going to be disappointed. There are going to be times where we will overthink, where we will maybe say something that could have been said better or phrased better, with others. So don't aim for perfection. It's more about learning from the times that we, where we missed the mark, where it could have been done a little bit differently, but we didn't. And that's fine, because that's where there's a learning opportunity. And where there's a learning opportunity, there's growth. There's an opportunity for growth.
And make for forgiveness. It's okay if we say the wrong thing, or, we're all human. We're all figuring it out as we go as well. It's okay if we get it wrong, both for ourselves, but also the people around us.
That's right. Yeah. That acknowledgement when, things are said that maybe, could have been worded differently, or that, it could be anything. Yeah. That definitely helps to then, I guess, smooth through, have a continue the relationship as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you're working with people, what do you mostly love about it? Like, what do you get out of the work that you do?
Well, I guess at the moment I've got a few different types of work that I do. So working with families and helping them to sort of help to facilitate their, conversations around separating, and that can be quite rewarding, as much as it's sitting in someone else's, challenge and difficulties. There's also that element of you're helping to support a family, So that's something that is quite priceless, I think. And then, I guess the other part of my work is with my book and speaking and being interviewed as well. That's, I get to meet so many people. It's just been really incredible. I mean, that's how we connected, and started this conversation. So that's been, it's really taking me in areas where I would never have thought of, and connecting with people and new relationships, whether it's personal or, people that I can work with and share this concept with. So that's really been not a surprise, but a pleasant surprise, because I didn't really see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it also showed me the importance of connecting with others as well. Even though I can say I'm, introverted, and I tend to keep to myself and have a small group. But I mean, the same way that we're connecting now, it just highlights the value of connecting and the surprises that can come with that.
Mm. And what are some things that you've learned about yourself? Because you've put yourself out there, right? You're self-confessed introverted overthinker who's now publicly speaking. What have you learned about yourself through that?
Yeah, that's a lot. A lot, actually, because I have really been quite driven to put myself out there, and which I never would have thought I would. I mean, even just being on social media was something that I really shied away from for many years, and, not anymore. So it's just not being afraid to share my story, what I've learned, what I've done, answer questions. So yeah, I guess I've learned how driven and motivated I am. And also, I mean, I'm talking about being strengths-based, so I'm going to talk about my strengths, but also I've realized how much work there is behind the scenes in, starting up a new business and connecting with people and learning what has to be done. I mean, regardless of the industry, it's all, and where I've had to wear so many hats. And one of the things that I would say I've learned is that I can't do it all.
Mm.
And that it's okay to outsource to people who know what they're doing. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it a common trait, do you think, like, as the overthinker, that you may be a little bit of a perfectionist or a little bit, you like the control of things? So has it been hard to hand things over?
Yes. Yes, because I do like to be involved, and I might have a specific idea around how it could be done.
Mm-hmm.
So getting someone else to do it. And also, I mean, I've had experiences where I've got other people to do it and I was disappointed. So, but all that taught me is that I have to trust my intuition and really feel aligned with the people that I connect with, and to be specific about what I'm asking for and what I need and how, what my expectations are. So it's been quite helpful. And I guess not to be afraid to then say, thank you, and I also need this, or I was wanting it this way or that way. And also at the same time thinking, well, maybe my way isn't the only way that things can be done, and this is actually really good. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, it's yes to all of that. And I forget what book it is that I read, but it's 80% done by somebody else compared to 100% done by you is good enough. because it can open up, figure out what is your superpower, what is do, and focus on that. We're only do one thing at a time, and we're only good at so many things. And yes, we could do all the things, but all the things which might be social media or the website or the newsletter or the phone calls or the emails, whatever it is. Well, if somebody else can do that to 80% of your 100%, then it just opens up the time focus where it is that your superpower is.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's when we don't realize how much time we lose doing things that we can outsource until we outsource it and we think, oh, wow, that's a load off my shoulder and I've got so much time, to do the more important things.
Like write a book, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, well done on that. Goodness me. That's definitely something that is in the background at the moment on my bucket list, but I'm not ready to commit to the type of time and energy that it's going to take to do that. But I understand very much how much it must have taken.
Years. Years. So.
Well done. So
it's just about keep moving, keep things moving.
Forwards, right? Keep focusing on that one goal. So if you could have a conversation with your younger self now, with everything you've learned, everything that you know, what would that conversation look like, Rosemary?
Well, I think I would tell my younger self, maybe I'm trying to rephrase it in a strengths-based way, because what really jumped out is not to be so hard on yourself, and I guess that's not to be so hard on yourself, and that things really do always work out, that the worries will be there whether or not, the situation will be there whether or not I've worried about it, spent hours worrying about it or not, and believe in yourself. So that's a few things that I would say. And again, because, when we believe in ourselves, all the other things that I mentioned aren't as heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about for us to do things that help us believe in ourselves.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? It's such a common thread, because I ask everybody that question at the end of our mission, and it's such a common thread. Believe in yourself, don't be so hard on yourself, love yourself, all these things that as an overthinker we sometimes neglect to do. They're actually simple things, aren't they, that just get forgotten.
Yeah, that's right.
It's such an important message. So thank you so much for time today, Rosemary. In the show notes, our listeners will be able to find all of your social media handles, but is there anywhere in particular that you like for people to look for you?
Well, probably my website is the easiest place to go to, and all my social media handles are there, or you can contact me direct there.
Okay, great. And your website is your name, isn't it? Do you want to spell it out just to make sure?
Yeah, rosemarygattuso.com, ROSEMARYGATTUSO.com.
Okay. I did see there's some great blogs on there. There's your book is on there, some of the workshops that you do as well. So if anyone is looking for even just to read about overthinking and about some strategies that we could be using for our own talk, but also when we're either working with people, but you will notice that a lot of this can be applied across everything, including to our clients, because our clients are really looking to us, whether or not we realize it. We are the light. We are the leaders for our clients. They do see us as for everything. So it's so important that we're using language that is going to be making sure that they are actually moving towards their goals. The time we're working with clients coming to us and they've got really negative talk, and often that negative self-talk comes from they've catastrophized whatever it is that is happening in their body, whether it's a sore back and they've been told that their discs have turned to powder, or they've got a disc bulge, or there's all of this catastrophizing of the body really doesn't help our clients move forwards. And this is one of the reasons that I wanted Rosemary to come in here, because the way that we use language in the studio can either help or hinder our clients moving forward. So thanks so much for joining us, Rosemary. This has been a really important conversation for us all. My name's Katie Crane. I'm the Pilates professional, and this is the Pilates Lounge podcast. See you all next week.